my gosh, Daniel, I freaking did it, and I can't believe that I get to sit here and share this video with you today because this is one of those goals that felt so unattainable to me, but we made it happen, and today I get to share with you how I got my first pull-up. Well, hey y'all, and welcome back to the channel, or if it's your first time here, welcome especially. I'm Sally, and I am just so excited for this video because like I said a second ago, it was one of those goals that felt so far off. But I'm gonna tell you how I got to this point, how I was able to get my first pull-up as someone who really has had a lot of difficulty activating my back muscles, and for whom getting a pull-up just seemed so unattainable for so long, even as I was strong in other areas. So we're gonna start at the very beginning, which honestly is relatively early childhood. I would say between the ages of like 10 and 13. I was having a lot of neck and trap pain. I would get really bad headaches from it sometimes, but overall everything here was just cranky. And I always had this right shoulder where if I'd roll it back, you'd hear all this crackling happening. And everyone was like, oh, that's kind of weird, but you know, the regular doctor is not doing anything about it. I just felt, I feel like I have the body of an 80-year-old man, and everyone kind of laugh at me because I'm like this young girl, but I'm like, no, like I don't know how to say it other than I feel like the body that I'm in, my musculoskeletal system feels way older than it should for how old I actually am. Well, probably around the same age, like 13 maybe, my family started seeing a chiropractor, and at that point it was helpful with a lot of the pain that I was experiencing with the headaches. I could go get adjusted. We do it about once a month, and as long as I was doing it that frequently, for the most part, I was fine. But it wasn't like, oh, I have the tools now to avoid this pain. It was I had to keep going back in order to see relief, which I was fine with, but I have since learned that there are ways to actually improve in the long term without constantly needing to go back for years and years and years. Well, skipping forwards a little bit to, I think it was like summer before my sophomore year of college. I don't even know how long ago. Was it like 5 or 6 years ago at this point? I think it was 2017. I'm not gonna try and do math right now, but I got into a skateboarding accident, and if you want a full video on that, let me know. I broke my collarbone. As you can see right here, I have a beautiful scar here on my shoulder. Broke my collarbone pretty good. Again, if you want a video on that healing process and just the story itself, let me know, because I really feel like that was a true instance of a miracle, that it was just my collarbone, and I would love to share in depth the healing process, but for the sake of time, I'm gonna try to like skip forwards a little bit. Broke my collarbone. I had a piece of muscle squished between the two bones there, and that caused a lot of pain, but it was kind of crazy. Like, it was super painful, and then I had to get surgery, and I expected it to be like an arduous healing process from the surgery. I had a plate and 6 screws put in, which are still there. They're titanium. But honestly, as soon as that was put in, the surgical pain I had to get over for like 2 days, but the deep pain from breaking my collarbone was completely gone. And I had full mobility back. I could lift my arm up over my head pretty much immediately. I could go out to the side, could go back behind me. And so the doctor who was overseeing the surgery said, okay, you're fine. You don't need to see a physical therapist. Well, in retrospect, I really wish I'd seen a physical therapist, because over time developed a lot of scar tissue through this area, which is normal, but which, you know, you could be proactive in dealing with that and preventing imbalances that result over the long term. So I developed a lot of scar tissue through my chest here, and I am already someone, which I didn't necessarily put words to at this time, but I'm already someone who's very push dominant. I'm very chest and shoulder and trap primarily dominant. My back muscles, just genetically, or maybe because of just like factors of my life, like lifestyle factors, my back muscles do not love to activate naturally, and that plays into why I was never able to do a pull-up, while I'd look at other people doing it and be like, my body just doesn't move that way, even again as I would have strength in other areas. But for the most part, it was fine here. I was told to expect some like lack of sensation, some tingling, potential numbness over months and maybe a couple years, but my doctor was like, that'll probably go away. Like, this is best case scenario, like you are the best case scenario is what he was saying. So I didn't see a physical therapist, but about 2 years ago now, I was at the point where I was having so much trap pain that it was just getting in the way of me doing my job and like working as a trainer. Like anytime I would do pushing movement, I get so much trap pain. It was something I was constantly aware of. I felt like my mobility sucked, and the real make it or break it factor, I guess, is that I started getting really bad headaches. And I had them for like a week straight. So finally I was like, I need to see somebody here in Wilmington. I got a recommendation from a friend, and I went to see the best chiropractor I've ever seen. He works at Atlantic Coast Chiropractic. If any of you are local to Wilmington, definitely go check him out. So he's a chiropractor, but I think he described himself as like a functional chiropractor. He has background in exercise and fitness as well. He is very, very much into fitness. And so he can offer, while I don't think he is like technically a physical therapist, he can offer more information than anybody I've ever met on how to like rewire the pathways, not just of your brain, but like brain muscle relationship. And anyway, really great doctor who is really geared at sustainability and helping me get to a place where I wasn't reliant on coming and seeing him every week. I don't even think he like crunched me one time. He did a really comprehensive examination to determine my range of motion through my neck, through my shoulders, and ability to activate my back muscles versus my traps, which no one else has ever done. And he was like, girl, you should have way more mobility than you have right now at your age. Which I was like, okay, thank you. I'm not totally crazy. He had me do a bunch of different movements. So like do a push-up, push above head, do an upright row, a lateral raise, and he was watching to see which muscles were working. And what he learned is that my traps were doing all the work. My back muscles were like, peace out. They really weren't doing their job. So this is very specific to me. Don't take this as like medical advice for you. Everybody's going to be different, but this is just the journey that I had to go through. And if you've experienced something similar, then maybe it'll be helpful. But he said, okay, first step, I hate to say it, but we are going to cut out all pushing movements for not permanently, but probably for about a month, maybe a little bit longer than that, while we work on two things: getting rid of the scar tissue through your shoulder and rewiring your brain to activate the proper muscles in your back. So I stopped doing push workouts, and I started primarily focusing on what he said are the Y's, T's, and W's. I'll show you here, but your arms are going up above head. You're working on mainly squeezing your lats. You do get a little bit of trap activation there, but the point is to minimize it. Your T's, you're going out to the side like a lateral raise, and then a W, squeezing back behind you. So he started me working on this, and actually at first I literally could not lift my arms above head or even in that lateral raise position without feeling crazy activation through my traps. So I said, hey, can I just focus on the W's for the time being? And he said, yep, that is 100% the right move. Just focus on the W's. You're going to do them like every single day using maybe a light resistance band or light weights. Some days I would even do them body weight. I would just walk around, and even if I had to keep my arms down, I would just think about like scap retractions, essentially squeezing, coming back to the start. And those scapular retractions are something that everybody can do to help start this process of being able to do a pull-up and strengthening your back muscles. Just think about squeezing your shoulder blades together while keeping the shoulders relaxed, and then relaxing back forwards there. So started doing that, and meanwhile he was doing something called the Graston technique on my trap, on my upper back, through my arm, any area that was kind of affected, looking to release trigger points and scar tissue. And so he's using these metal tools that are essentially scraping. It hurts like heck. You want to punch the guy, but you also love him because he's making you feel so much better in the long run. We were able to minimize the scar tissue, minimize the trigger points, and ultimately rewire my brain using these exercises to activate the correct muscles. So then I started really getting into more intense back training. I was able to add back in a lat pull down, which previously, even just lifting my arms up above head, I was really feeling in my traps. So this is where the pull-up specific training really begins. Eventually I added back in the shoulder work, but that's beside the point for now. So lat pull down was a really big focus because obviously that's the same range of motion that you're working as you're doing a pull-up. With the lat pull down, I just started naturally kind of like a wide grip here, and every single week, I think I was able to start at like 70 pounds, which was like the plateau that I'd hit what felt like years ago. But what I did see with this is I was like rapidly able to increase my strength. So I would do my lat pull downs, probably like 4 sets of 6 to 8 with a real emphasis on strength. And then every week I'd try to add about 5 pounds. Or if I couldn't add weight yet in the increments available, I would just start doing a few more repetitions until I couldn't. Now, I also started to mess around with my grip on the lat pull down, because sometimes with that wide standard grip, I was still feeling it a lot through my shoulders and more through the upper back. And what we determined is that I was having so much trouble, again, activating my lats, so lower down through the back. So what we figured out is that if I did a grip that was closer together, if I did a single arm lat pull down, it would really help me to focus on the one side, or I could use something called the mag grip, which I really like to this day. You hold it in nice and close grip lat pull down here, get way more lat activation, which was really, I think, groundbreaking for me, able to focus in on my lats. So looked for progressive overload on the lat pull down. I was training back at least 2 times a week. Of course, we're also doing rows, which is our other primary back range of motion. If you watch my How to Start Working Out series, you would know that. And after a little while, decided, okay, I am going to try to flip my hands around on the bar, and we're going to do a pull down that way. And I'm like blanking on what you would specifically call this, but it's the equivalent of a chin up, but now on the lat pull down. So palms are facing the body, pulling down, getting even more activation, getting familiar with that range of motion. And eventually I moved over to the assisted pull-up machine. Now for me, this was a pride thing. It's an ego thing. I will fully admit it. It's difficult for me to get on something where I know I'm gonna need like a ton of assistance or barely be able to move any weight. And on the assisted pull-up machine, it kind of works in reverse of most exercises, because it's your body weight that you're trying to pull. Any weight that you add is giving you assistance. Like the more weight you add, the easier it is. So I started out probably only pulling like 50 to 60 pounds of my own body weight, maybe a little bit more. Had to set my ego aside, was doing the same thing, 3 to 4 sets, about 6 to 8 reps, trying to increase the weight, or I would increase the repetitions if I couldn't quite increase the weight, but I could increase the repetitions. And I did notice, like over the first couple weeks though, I was very quickly able to move more of my own body weight, which was crazy. It was just like getting used to that range of motion. The strength had really started to develop in my lats. Now I just needed to learn to use them. And little tips that would, or tricks that helped me throughout the process is I would, before each repetition, I would just tap there on my lats, like where do I want to squeeze? And that helps you make your mind muscle connection to better activate those muscles. My husband would also sometimes stand behind me and like press on those muscles gently to help squeeze as I, controlled the movement. But anyways, I sought after progressive overload with the assisted pull-up machine, and I got to the point where I was only using about 45 pounds of assistance. At that time, I probably weighed about 165, 160. I was like 45 pounds away from pulling my own body weight. So I was pulling about 120 pounds of my own body weight. And there I kind of reached this point where I'm like, why not just see how little assistance I can use? So I started with each set taking it up a gear, using less resistance, and I was able to do like 2 repetitions with about only 35 pounds of assistance, maybe 30 pounds. The next drop down was like 27 pounds of assistance, and I tried it that day just for 1 repetition and I couldn't complete it. So I was like, okay, I think I'm tired out though. Let's try next time, see if I can do just 1 repetition at 27 pounds of assistance. So I went back, next back workout, I was able to do that 1 repetition. I think I did it a few times, and then what I would do is drop sets. So I do 1 repetition at 27 pounds or the minimal resistance, and then I would have to go back up. So I was using more assistance, and I would complete like 6 more repetitions, or I'd go until failure. And at that point I was working towards failure each time. We went on a little trip, didn't have an assisted pull-up machine, but they had bands that I could use, which I've since ordered because they're really, really helpful. And so I was doing assisted pull-ups on a band, not quite certain how much resistance it was providing, but what it did do is it actually lessens the amount of resistance at the top of the repetition. And the top of the repetition is usually what's going to be more difficult than the bottom of the repetition. So that was a really helpful tool. And then I didn't have one starting out, so I just went back to the assisted pull-up machine, but per the recommendation of several friends and trainers, I was told start working on negatives. So what I would do is I would go up to the top of a repetition. I would either hop up or I'd use the assisted pull-up machine to pull myself up there. And then I'm going to kick my feet off and I would slowly lower back down, keeping it as controlled as possible. And I could usually only do about one at a time and really control it, so I'd shake it out. We kind of switched over to these one workout with my husband. He was like, let's just purely do negatives. And I was annoyed because it was so tedious, but I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just purely do negatives. I hopped up, controlled it, back down. I probably did about 18 that day, 3 sets of 6, which was tedious, took time. But that's when things really started to change, because I was at this point, I was moving a ton of my own body weight, but it was just like a little plateau. Okay, so we went to the beach one day and parked in this parking lot where you have to like walk aways, and there's a park right there. And I saw this pull-up bar and I was like, I'm just gonna try, I'm gonna see how close we can get. And I think this was actually the day before we were purely training negatives. So I hopped up, and for the first time I was able, like literally night and day difference, I was able to get myself out of the hole on my own. I got to 90 degrees just about with my elbows, but I just couldn't go any further. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am so close. I was like giddy. And I expected it to be another like month or 2 before I could get to the end result, because I couldn't get past that point. But then we trained the negatives. And then there were a few other times where there was a pull-up bar, and every time I was like, okay, I'm just gonna try. We're gonna see how close I could get. I made my husband film it because I was like, I have to get this on video. And then literally all of a sudden, one day, we go to the gym and I was like, I'm gonna try, and I got it. I got all the way to the top. I wish we would have like kept the camera rolling a little bit longer because I was just so giddy. I couldn't believe it. I'm up there, I'm like, Samuel, did I really just do this? And I'm just holding myself there, and I controlled it back down. I was like, holy cow, I freaking did it. I stood in the corner and cried a little bit and tried not to let anyone in the gym see me, because I was like, I don't know, it was just such a big and crazy moment for me. And then what was wild is that with rest in between, I was able to do 3 more that day. I couldn't do 3 in a row by any means. I have not been able to do more than 1 at a time yet, but with rest, I could do a few more. So that's how we got there. This is like so rambly, I realize, but let's talk about how we're going to move forward. So at this point, I'm really focusing on training the negatives and on training with the band, because again, the band is giving you less assistance at the top of the repetition, which is where I really struggle. So how I've been working now is I'll do 1 pull-up because that's what I can manage. And then I will actually, if I'm able to manage it, I'll go about like a quarter of the way down and I'll pull back up just as many times as I can, working that spot that I really struggle with. Usually as many times as I can, as like 2 to 3 repetitions. Then I'm at the top, and then I'm gonna slowly control it back down. Now, so far, I've only been able to do those partial repetitions on my own for 1 set. So then I just go to the negatives. I'll do 1 pull-up and I'll do like 4 negatives. And I'll do that about 3 or 4 times per workout. And now with the band, what I'll be doing is doing 1 pull-up, and then I will also add in that band, and I'll do pull-ups to failure, and then I will do a negative. And my goal now is to be able to do 10, which I know seems big and seems crazy. I still can't do more than 1. I'm close to being able to do 2 at a time. I don't have a time set for this goal yet, but we're gonna get there, and I'm just so excited to see what my body can do. And I hope that while rambling, this just serves as encouragement that you can do that thing that feels so far off and so scary. You just have to be diligent about it, have to make a plan. And you know, the other part of this for me was I was losing fat throughout this process. We've been doing our cut, and so it was like I'm getting stronger, but I'm also removing excess body weight that is getting in the way of me handling my mass better and with more grace. So that's the story. I really appreciate being here for celebrating with me, because I know a lot of y'all were so sweet when I posted that short. So yeah, I'm gonna end the video here, but thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Bye, y'all.